All right, Avengers fans, welcome back to another episode of Assemble. My name is High Ruler, and today is episode 3 of your Avengers Weekly Recap, where Stardust joins me and we talk about this week in Avengers and everything surrounding the game. Stardust, how you doing today?
I'm doing all right, man. How are you? I think this is
Oh,
becoming a catchphrase.
yeah, a little bit, a little bit. I think we got the intro kind of settled now, right? Like, I do my intro, I say, how's it going? You say, I'm doing all right, man. And then, it is kind of, but I like it. I like it. It's a little bit of routine, never a bad thing, right?
People will get used to it. We can then sell merchandise with just "How are you doing?"
That that's a great idea. That's a great
There you
idea.
go.
I'll put that in the plans. Um, Guys, today we have a lot to talk about. We have Ultimate Iron Man. We have Spider Man. We have, obviously, I want to hear a little bit about Outriders and maybe what Avengers can do that Outriders has done well, because Outriders is seemingly doing really well since the demo drop. We talk a little bit about Anthem and what happened with Anthem. And last but certainly not least, I know people are going to want to hear about this Cloney Labs footage, so we are going to talk about this Cloney Labs footage. But first and foremost, obviously, let's start with let's start with Spider-Man, because I think this is one that's probably more interesting than the rest of them put together in some ways. So for anyone who doesn't know, Miller has seen some Spider-Man data in the files, and he leaked some emotes. I think it was 3 emotes. Am I correct on that one, Stardust?
That's right, mate.
So
That's right, indeed.
yeah, so I'll pull them up on the screen for the people who are watching. So it's 3 emotes, and his indication of Spider-Man is that he is further along than anyone else right now. So to him, it's indicative of the time sensitivity to the release of the character, which would mean that Spider-Man would be coming out after Hawkeye, if that's the case. Stardust, what do you make of all this when we kind of look at where everything is, and now we're kind of looking at Spider-Man being the next character after Hawkeye? What's your first impression about that news?
Well, as a PlayStation player, I'm buzzing, and a Spider-Man fan. I mean, for me, that's great news. But obviously, I know that there's a lot of controversy surrounding Spider-Man because of the console exclusivity. So, I mean, I'm glad that he's further along for my sake. I would like him to have maybe come out with Clint or with Black Panther or some other content just to keep everyone occupied. But I have a couple of ideas as to why he was pushed so close to after Hawkeye. Anyway,
You do realize you're on a platform where you can talk about those ideas, right?
I do.
Do,
so
okay, please, yeah, go.
No, I'll be honest. I was waiting. I was waiting for a bit of build up before I got into it. Like I thought you might have said, "Okay, well, floor is
Oh,
yours."
oh
Right.
yeah, no, I thought you were just gonna go right into it. I thought you'd be like, I'm about to drop like the hottest like take of like 2021 right here on Spider-Man. I was like, but yeah, I mean, like, I think,
Wait, it's it's not a hot take. Is what I think it is a genuinely thing because I think it was quite a last minute thing, and I think they went to. They went to CD Square Enix and they were like, "Oh, by the way, I know you've got all this stuff to like sort out before launch, but here's Spider-Man, so go and do that, and you've got to do it in this time frame, right?" And
yeah,
obviously they went, "Oh shit, okay." And obviously with the resources that they had and with all the stuff that they needed to catch up on anyway, and then with Spider-Man as well, I actually believe that Spider-Man could be a reason for a lot of like hold back. That makes sense. Like I think that he was a roadblock that the devs had to face. Like obviously there's a lot of issues that they mentioned, but they'll never mention that Spider-Man's really screwed us over here. Like, do you know what I
yeah,
mean? Because obviously
yeah.
it's a part of the deal. But I think that the idea is to get him done, finish that contractual obligation, and then literally you're free then to do. I'm assuming they don't have any more of these like character deals, so ideally they should be able to get back on track. So I think they just wanted to push him out as soon as they could.
It's really interesting that you talk about a little bit of the development resources that would go into Spider-Man, because if Spider-Man has been such a roadblock in terms of development resources, do we should we start assuming that there's more to him than just the character itself? Like, do we expect like a villain to come alongside him? Do we expect like a unique villain sector for that villain, right? So new areas, new like you know what I mean? Like what should we like? And that's what I've been kind of wondering myself, right? If it's just a character, I can understand that like maybe the people who are working on for example like Black Panther are pulled away from the animations or whatever what have you from Black Panther. But if it's more than that, then you're pulling away a significant part of other teams too to kind of make this exclusive content, which we don't know is only timed, right? So I think that's an interesting question that we have to start asking is how many people and how many different departments may have been pulled away to make Spider-Man, and we actually won't know that until like we get the reveal. Which I'm gonna be honest with you, considering the state of play and what we got out of it, I thought Spider-Man would have been like the biggest news out of it. No, what did you think?
I mean, when I was watching the state of play, I had the same mindset as you when I was watching some of the stuff in it, and I thought like this is a very like sort of state of play. You know, they could have easily put something Spider-Man related in there, and it wouldn't have been looked down upon. Like it wasn't like they got like Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2, Ghost of Tsushima 5, or you know what I mean? There wasn't anything huge in there to really warrant it being like, oh, Marvel's Avengers, you know what I mean? Taking a slot. Like, I would have rather have seen Spider Man over PS5 Crash 4, for example, right? Like, but obviously that's biased. But I think I can't see him coming with a full story. I think the contractual obligation, again, I can't see their contract, so I've literally no idea. But from the way they described it in his debut article, they were like, he's got events and challenges to test him, and that's it. They never mentioned a story, they never mentioned a villain or anything like that. Obviously, they mentioned cosmetics, which is a fairly obvious one. You know,
Yep.
I think those cosmetics could do really well. But and obviously he's got his own gear as well and stuff like that. But besides that, I don't think we should be expecting some sort of big extravaganza for him. I do, however, think that like they want to bundle Spidey in with a bunch of other content, which I thought originally, when Miller said he was pushed up, is that like, oh well, I mean, Clint is a good time for it. But then you also then think Clint would heavily be overshadowed, right, by Spider-Man on at least on the PlayStation side of things. Like everyone's like, so we get just Clint and they get Spider-Man and Clint. What? Like, so it's awkward. I don't really know how they're gonna do this, to be honest, where everyone can be happy.
Well, I think that's the point is that not everyone's going to be happy, right? Like just out of the inclusion of Spider-Man, not everyone's going to be happy. But it was really interesting
Exactly.
because like when I think about that March 18th date, next gen Hawkeye, would Spider-Man have fit in there pretty nicely with even taking into account the hurt feelings of PC and Xbox players? I think he would have fit in there because it's like new people are going to maybe pick up the game on a next gen kind of relaunch. And I say relaunch very loosely. I just mean next gen upgrade. New story, new character, new biome. Would Spider-Man have fit in there pretty nicely? Yeah, probably. He actually would have. It would have been like a kind of a nice place to put him. But at this point, I would not expect Spider-Man anytime soon. Though it is interesting because like the clock's ticking, I guess, right? Like if there is some time sensitivity to this contract and they're trying to rush him to get out, like to get out the door, the clock's ticking. We're almost in March. Like, where does early 2021 end in terms of contractual like obligations? Right? Is that a late April, for example? Like that's what we have to start thinking about, right? Like, when people would say like early 2021, I kind of just brushed it off. I was like, yeah, whatever. He'll come when he comes. But now that he's in theory been pushed up with all the data added to him, now actually in my head I'm starting to think about when should I expect a Spider-Man kind of announcement. Is it like the Tuesday after Hawkeye, or say Tuesday, sorry, the Thursday after Hawkeye, or during that next week or the week after? Like, what do you think is like the most logical timeline, considering the work that they're doing really does implicate like an early 2021 release?
Um, I think that when I mean Phil said it himself when they were doing the play with the dev stream and people kept continuously asking about Spider-Man. He was like, Clinton first, then we'll worry about, pretty much then we'll address other superheroes. So I have this feeling that, like, obviously any sort of slight hope that there could be like some sort of massive Spider-Man drop on March 18th definitely isn't a thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can't see that at all. But I can see uh, it not being too far off away from Clint. I don't think we'll have to wait long between. So say like Kate and Clint was quite. It's been quite a big gap in between. I don't think we'll have that same thing with Spider-Man,
Mm-hmm.
but I do think we'd have that same thing with the next hero on every console. So we assume Black Panther, right? So obviously, I think it'll probably be Clint, Spider-Man in the middle of this timeline, and then Panther for everyone else. But then what do you do in the middle to you can't rectify it, but try and ease the pain a little bit around the edges. And I was thinking, obviously, with just a spoiler for what we're going to talk about later about cloning labs and being bundled with other content, it would make sense to maybe have Spider-Man bundled in with labs and stuff like that.
Dude, you know what? You know how I know you were the right pick for this podcast? Because you pulled that idea like right out of my head. I was thinking about on Friday. This is a great segue into Cloney Labs because Phil had said that on Friday, and now that we've kind of seen, now it almost feels like. No, obviously, what I'm going to show you guys for anyone who's watching on YouTube, I'm going to start playing a little bit of this Cloney Labs footage. This is from September, so don't put. There's no indication that Cloney Labs is anywhere close to coming anytime soon. But wouldn't it really be interesting if Spider-Man and Cloney Labs and maybe maybe another Omega level threat all came in one update? So Xbox PC players got some endgame content. And if we think there's not really much coming to Spider-Man, then we get endgame content with just a different character. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
wouldn't
exactly. Yeah.
that might be an interesting play there because for as much as people would be upset about Spider-Man, they would be happy that there's endgame content available to them, right? So maybe that is an interesting play that I never actually even considered, in terms of kind of like two birds, one stone situation, right? Like that's a really interesting idea that I just came up now, but now that I'm thinking about it and hearing you talk about it, it's actually like something viable in my head. Whether or not it
Yeah.
happens remains to be seen, but.
Well, I think like if you try and have a hero here and then Spider-Man, you've got that comparison. But I think that Cloning Labs is such a huge deal now, like a myth almost. Do you know what I mean? Like some sort of magical unicorn. That the conversations may be like 50% Spider-Man stuff, 50% Cloning Labs, and obviously, if you manage to bundle it up with other Omega level threats, that actually might be the only thing to make people maybe not worry as much about Spider-Man than if you put him just with another character.
Mm.
And it's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting take on it. But let me switch gears a little bit here because now we're starting to get into the Cloney Labs territory. And let me give some context for people because this really happened late last night. So people may have been in bed or not, kind of around on social media. So yesterday on Twitter, Miller put out a bounty for some Cloney Labs footage. I guess he's looking for the whole kind of kit and caboodle of Cloney Labs footage. But he was approached by a follower of his who had a link to an Italian content creator named Zaborg, and Zaborg had uploaded pretty heavily edited, about 6 minutes worth. I think it's like 6 minutes worth of footage of Cloney Labs from back in September. Now, as we talk about this, I'm going to show you guys the footage, but it's very much so like the mobs are glitched. So don't take into anything of that into consideration. And obviously the rewards screen at the end, it's not indicative of the rewards that you'll get, because apparently at the end of it, the group that ran this was able to get a lifeline tablet, which is a major artifact that is coming in the game, but it's not shown in the screen. But first things first, Stardust. What did you make of this? Well, yeah, tell me what you make of this footage, and then I'll tell what I make of this footage. But please, let's hear what you thought of it when you first saw it.
I mean, it looks exactly what we want. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, minus the abomination thing at the end. So, obviously, the idea is that you do these. One person stands on this panel. You have to stay on it though, while two of your teammates go into this little space, pull out the. I don't know what it's called,
Like
but
the power
it's
core.
yeah, the power core. That's it, and the other one breaks it, and obviously then you move on to the others, and if you do all four, then you get four abominations, and I'm assuming better rewards for the four abominations, and like stuff like that. Even though yes, it's abomination, it's endgame content and teamwork that I think screams Marvel's Avengers game, right? You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like obviously it's we've heard about some of these puzzles and stuff, but the fear that I could feel any end game player or anything like that feeling when you have to stand on this panel, and if you move off it or you get knocked, your teammates get zapped that go inside, like that sounds awesome, right?
Yep.
And obviously, we were going, like we saw some of the footage, going through like this underwater area, and the fact that there's an entire top section as well, and we're really traveling through this mission. I can totally understand why they need to make sure everything's pretty much sorted, and it like. I think I take back my whole thing about agreeing to just ripping the band-aid off and releasing Cloning Labs, because after looking
Yep.
at it last night, I can 1,000,000% just get why this can't be a release like that without fixing all these issues.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
like you're 100% correct, because that was exactly what I was gonna say. I was like, I actually take back everything I said last week about cloning labs,
yeah,
because like here's kind of what we see right now. We see a like basically a long group activity, which at this point in the game is very susceptible to a lot of different glitches, and any one of those glitches, since there's no checkpoint, sends you back to the lobby, right? Like you're going back to that Quinjet, right? So like without so I probably assumed in my very hyperbolic statement that there probably would be checkpoints. I'm actually okay that there's not checkpoints in terms of the difficulty surrounding it, right? This means that like your build's gonna have to have some defense in it, right? You're not running a one shot in there, right? You're running some stuff that is gonna be it's going to be a little bit tankier, right? So you're going to sacrifice a little bit of DPS for tankiness. That's totally okay with me. I'm totally fine with that. There's going to be some communications. There's going to be some fuck ups where like if you fuck something up, you fuck a puzzle up, your teammates could get just vaporized, right? There's part of the footage there where we kind of see Iron Man's health bar just kind of get depleted because like they messed up a puzzle, right? Like these things are really cool. Like I'm super excited for it, but unfortunately, I think now, obviously we don't know a lot unless we're told, right? So now that we've been told there's no checkpoints, now that we've seen kind of the intensity of it in certain sections of it, now I'm like, oh shit, I gotta walk back, just saying ripped it off, you know what I mean? But I think that's part of the situation where it's like I would love to know more about this mission, right? Like it's seemingly like I'm looking at the footage and it's so cool. Like I like now like at some point I put Cloney Labs to bed in my brain. You know what I mean? Like I tucked it in, I kissed it goodnight. I said I'll see you in the morning. If that's 6 months from now, I'll see you in the morning. But now that I'm seeing this footage again, I'm like, I want this like more than anything. Like this would be like something I would play from like sun up to sundown every day it's available, and it sucks more than ever than now that I can't have it again. You know what I mean?
yeah. I mean, I remember again. I can't quote exact word for word, but I can remember Phil saying that when Cloning Labs is ready, they wanted to showcase it, and
Mm-hmm.
I thought to myself like that makes total sense, because if they do anything beforehand, like say they did what Miller did and they showed like a playthrough of it. Like obviously with one of their own team members played it, but then they're like, yeah, but we just don't know where it's coming out. It's like yeah, if they did it, we'd all be saying, "Well, that's stupid." Right? Why would they? Why would they do that? But then, obviously, because it's Miller doing it, and we just get to like have a little glimpse of something that like we never thought we would. It's a different story, and we can really look at it and be like, "Wow, okay, you know what, devs, do the best you can." Like, because it's this. It looks fantastic, and it's something that I can totally see myself playing with a bunch of friends and that, and just I can see myself. To be honest, and this might seem like I lack confidence, I can see myself getting absolutely battered, like, but loving every single second of it. But I think that one thing that I am interested in is the rewards at the end. So obviously, it's supposed to be a really long mission. You're not allowed to get wiped. Like, obviously, I know we get the major artifacts, but say you play it again and you ace it and you do everything perfectly, you kill the four abominations. Like, is it exotic, a guaranteed exotic awaiting you, or is it just one of them things where like, okay, here's some polycoron and upgrade modules, and you get a chance on an exotic? Are people going to be annoyed at that, or what? There's now a different type of potential problem that could come with cloning labs at the end, even if people really like the mission.
Well, let's think about it this way. So Mega Hive is 3 hours of your time, right? If you do Mega Hive start to finish, it's about 3 hours, give or take, right? Depending on your build or whatever, and you get 2 guaranteed exotics from it. This is an hour to 2 hours first shot. I guarantee it's, even for yourself who you say is going to get battered, I guarantee once the puzzles are out and you've run it enough times, it's going to be pretty whittled down to 45 minutes maybe. Eventually it'll probably be 45 minutes, right?
Yeah,
I would think that in totality this will come with its own gear, like gear table, right? There'll be like pieces, and we've seen those drops before. We've seen drops that have Cloney Labs perks to them, right? But I would even think that there will just be brand new items that come as a part of this that you can only find there, legendaries, exotics alike. And I would think that maybe your first clear of the week maybe is a guaranteed exotic, and then maybe you have some chances to get some legendary gear with special perks, or maybe it's another like a 50-50 legendary with some special perks, 50-50 for an exotic. I think that's similar to Last Avenger Standing is right now, if I'm correct on that one, right?
I believe so. Yeah, it's either
Yeah.
fifth. It's either the one side is exotic, one side is Jarvis barrier gear.
Right. Yeah. Something like something like that. They could do it something like that. But I think they do need specialized loot that comes with this, because it's like um specialized loot, as well as incorporating maybe more of the loot table that is from other things. So like attacking on Rift loot table, a Mega Hive loot table. I was gonna say root table, loot table. A Last Avenger Standing loot table, right? Maybe you pile all that in, but you give a percentage bonus to earning anything that's native to Cloney Labs itself, right? Maybe that's the way to do it, right? To incentivize that group play that the game's missing. If you want to go play Last Avenger Standing 14 floors, go for it. If you want to play Mega Hive, which is 8 Mega Hive missions, go for it. But we really want people to play like this almost crowning jewel of what we think our end game is going to lead into, right? As we get more out. I think maybe something like that is kind of where they should go with it. But yeah, I mean, like, I think loot is gonna be one of those things where, is it gonna be worth it? Like the 3 weeks after it comes out, are people still running it? Are people still excited to do it? Right? Because I think eventually, the players are gonna get so good, and we see this with every game, right? Players can get really good really quickly at kind of your end game activities, right? You give some time to the hardcore, and the hardcore makes videos, and then that gets disseminated down, and then you do Sherpa runs or whatever. Like, eventually, even like your lowest tier of players are going to be pretty comfortable running in there. So the only way to keep those players invested and engaged is through like cool loot. So that's my biggest concern when I see this. It's like, what is at the end of the journey,
Yeah, exactly. Like, and here's the thing: is that like, obviously, we look at this mission at the minute and we think, wow, look at all this like amazing team play, all these puzzles, all this like craziness. But it's exactly as you said, that eventually people are going to get used to it, and it's going to get to a point where it's like, okay, cloning labs, cool, I can run in there with my eyes closed now, you know. So, but here's the awkward thing: is like, obviously it seems from the surface and the way they advertise it and what we've seen that you should get a crazy reward at the end for doing it. But
Hmm.
when you get to a point where you can go in there with your eyes closed and speed run it, and the puzzles, because I'm assuming the puzzles don't change, so once we've got it once, we should get it every other time since, right?
Right.
um so obviously by say it was a guaranteed exotic just every time, similar to mega hives. We've run in there, we've smashed it in 45 minutes, and there you go, you got an exotic. Oh, we'll just do it again, and then you find more paths, so you find even quicker ways to do it, and you rush to the end, you beat the abominations, simple as that. And it gets
Yeah.
to a point where it's like, how do you balance that out between making it so that, like, people can still learn, but also, you can get something cool when you really tested, aka your first couple of times. But then what happens after that if people just want to farm it as quick as they can?
Yeah. I mean, this might involve a greater conversation, but I do want to pull in one question here. Since we're talking about kind of cloning labs and looting, and even in some cases progression at that point, Dad Panther had asked, "What does farming for gear look like down the road in Marvel's Avengers?" Right. So we know, pretty much that a gear, a power raise is coming. Right. Power levels will go up. We do know that they're looking at progression. We do know that Cloney Labs is going to be kind of, eventually will be kind of that end game content that you're going to want to farm. Um, how does that fit into kind of progression and moving forward? Because like there's something to be said right now of maybe we need new ways to progress. Maybe we need new gear. And how do you kind of fit all these pieces together, including Cloney Labs, into a perfect system where every time you come on, you're doing something that is valuable to your time, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, like, I think that the biggest thing at the moment is that the game right now has this weird thing of, like, the ways to get the high tier loot isn't fun enough to repeat, and the
Mm-hmm.
loot itself isn't worth repeating the content that you might not enjoy. So you've got like a sandwich of just do you know what I mean? Whereas,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
if one thing was great but the other thing was uh, then you've kind of got that balance of it, of at least, okay, I like the content, so at least I'll get something at the end if I just repeat it. Or if the loot is awesome, you're like, you know what, I think I will just bother doing the mega hive this week, for example, or last Avengers standing like another 4 times if you've got the time for that. But I think that, something that this game is missing, and Outriders already does really well, is I want a farming thing. I want multiple places to just go and farm that aren't, elevators and hives and stuff like that, right? And I think that, like, cloning labs and other endgame activities could be that, while they're still working on Gear 2.0. And it's something that I mean, it's something that I personally miss with Avengers. It's just that need to, like, jump on every day to get gear pieces, because exotics are no different realistically to a really good legendary, and obviously that's right now. But I think down the road, I'll be honest, I don't really have an answer to that, because I can't really think of the stuff that they could have in the future that could maybe make it worth it, if that makes sense. Like the sort of content that they could release that would make me want to just keep playing it over and over again.
Yeah. I mean that's a good point. Is like the content has to support the loot grind, but the loot grind also has to support the content, right? It's a symbiotic relationship between the two, right? So you're perfect. You're 100% right in that if it's a mess sandwich on both sides, whatever you have in the middle is still going to be surrounded by the two pieces of bread that aren't really good, right? So one is maybe met content, the other one's met loot, right? Like, so in my perfect scenario, how I see kind of farming gear moving forward is obviously each kind of activity as it sort of is now, right? Mega Hive, Tachyon Rift, Last Avenger Standing. Each of them will have their own kind of loot tables with the exotics that drop. You'll have your big group missions, or maybe like a horde mode, or something like that. Will have a wider loot pool that pulls from different things to kind of incentivize that group play. But if you're looking for something very specific, very kind of, this piece drops from this activity, then you go to that activity and you farm the fuck out of it as much as you can, right? As like more activities come, I think they need more loot to kind of support these activities, because like at some point it's like you're kind of looking in two ways, right? You're trying to incentivize group plays. You're having a wide loot pool, and then you're looking at like a very focused run of your time. So I mean, like in terms of like what is it going to look like? I mean, we need to see the content that's coming to really specify what is it going to look like, right? Obviously,
Yeah.
when power caps get increased, which eventually they will. I mean, every looter game does have power cap increase. We'll start to see maybe higher tier gear drop from Cloning Labs, and then kind of incentivize people to play that, right? Let me just make it clear that by design, Cloning Labs is going to be like a very high tier place to go, right? Like it's not going to be your run of the mill kind of frolic out in the daisies kind of situation. Like this will be like your kind of test of your group here, to really nail down like it, do you know what you're doing essentially, right? And because of that, it will reward gear that hopefully is indicative of the effort and the time that you're putting into it. Now, whether that comes alongside a power cap increase, so for example, Mega Hive, Last Avenger Standing, Tachyon Rifts, they all cap out at they all cap out at 140, right? It's 140 without your it's what 130, sorry. No, 140. I'm an idiot.
There we go.
They cap out at 130, and then you upgrade them to 140, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my god, I'm such an idiot. So for example, all those missions could drop 130 gear. You upgrade it to 140, and then with your major artifact puts you at 150. Cloning Labs, for example, could drop 140 gear, and then then with your plus 10, that puts you at 160, right? 140 boosted to 150. Drop your 10. 160 or something, right? You know what I mean? Like eventually Cloning Labs will probably coincide with a power cap increase, which will further incentivize you to kind of run that. But then like how do you like judge the scales of like challenge levels and stuff? Like there's so many different ways to kind of look at this question. And unfortunately, without knowing like a lot of the intricacies of like what they're doing, and I'm like stumbling over my words today, it's really one of those things where it's just like a wait and see, At
Yeah,
bare
I mean,
bones, I was just gonna say, at bare bones, you hope that the loot accompanying Cloning Labs is worth your time and effort, and then after that, who knows, right?
here's the thing: is like if you play a lot of looters and you see cloning labs and you're excited to get into it and you're learning it and you're trying to get into it as much as you can and you get to the end of it and you perfect it and you look at the end and say the major artifact isn't for you, right? So obviously look at the lifeline tablet, you think it's I mean thanks, but it's just not for me. And then you look at the gear you get and it's just one of them basic legendaries you can get from maybe like a priority mission or something, right? And that instantly is knocking the air out of your lungs kind of thing. So I totally see what you mean by that. It needs to kind of have its own loot table, because if I just get like run of the mill like uh buff rounds for Widow out of it, it's going to be so heartbreaking to have to have run their in their own words the toughest mission in the game, to just be given a legendary drop that I could maybe get from a vault mission opening a chest, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, they need to make sure that for their own words, the hardest mission in the game is given the best reward. That if like because Miller explained it a lot when he was doing the live stream, is that it seems to be that the abomination thing, getting all four out, is a risk and reward system. And it's like, okay, cool, so there's clearly a lot of risk, which is fun, but does the reward match the risk? If I fight all four abominations and my team's fine and we somehow 5-star all of Cloning Labs without anyone going down, what does the end look like,
Yeah, and I mean that's the biggest question, right? Is it worth players to just to fail the puzzles, get one abomination, and be done with it, or is it worth them to kind of actually play it to its full completion, which is going to be like the most interesting part of the whole scenario, right? And unfortunately, it'll be one of those we won't know until we either see it in its full or until we play it, and until then, it's all left to speculation, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's it for the Cloning Labs segment. Obviously, one of the things I do want to talk about quickly, though, is when they're talking about Cloning Labs on the dev stream, before we just totally switch gears here, they did talk about they're working on more content that's like Cloning Labs. Now, after you seen Cloning Labs in this kind of new footage, does that kind of excite you for like the future of the game and like end game multiplayer stuff? Like when you see it and then you hear they're working on more stuff like that, what's your first thought about like kind of the end game possibilities for Marvel's Avengers?
I think that if anyone was worried that this game was going to feel like you're very much alone but still a part of a team, I think that Cloning Labs was a good indicator that they're clearly focused on teamwork. I think we just haven't had a chance to really see that yet because obviously, we haven't had Cloning Labs, we haven't had the other Omega level threats. And if they're working on endgame content that does, need teamwork, then it will get to a point where people's concerned that, like, say for example, the Mega Hive obviously being a, single player. I remember that was a big issue when it first come out. I think that people who enjoy just playing with their friends are going to have a really big kick out of the stuff that this game is going to have come in, hopefully in this year, and very early the next, where we'll just be stacked with things to do. Like, we'll have like a calendar of, okay, well, Monday's this Omega level threat, and Tuesday we've got this to be able to do, and then, so should
Yeah,
be good.
no, hopefully. All right, well, let's take a stroll down the bad lane here. So this week was the kind of announcement of the closure of Anthem, I guess is kind of a nice way to put it. So Anthem 2.0, Anthem Next is not going to happen. And kind of on cue, after that, people were looking to Marvel's Avengers thinking, are they next? Is this it? Like, and I'd love to kind of just, hear your thoughts first, Stardust, on kind of what you make of the Anthem announcement. And do you think Avengers is on that sort of path, or do you think they've already kind of diverted away from the path that Anthem went on after launch?
Well, I mean, I'm gutted because the thing is, Anthem had a lot of promise when it first come out. It
Mm,
had a lot of good stuff there. It just was plagued with, uh, lack of endgame content, which is ironic, and like. But the thing is, I think that Anthem and Avengers can only really be compared by the fact that Avengers at its core is really good. It's the actual like live service elements surrounding it that are a bit meh at the minute, right? And the same could have been said for Anthem. That to me is where the comparison should end because I think that the path that they've both gone down is like with Anthem, it you know, it started off as people noticing that it just the terrible load times and stuff like that, and it it's really hard to explain because it feels different to me. Like when I played Avengers and I saw these problems, yes, it sucks, but it didn't feel like that was gonna like kill this game
mm-hmm.
like when I played Anthem and I went through these things and I was then replaying the same stronghold in like day 3 of playing the game, right? It's like in Avengers I still have choices. Even if they're Tachyon Rifts plus Avengers standing mega hives, with Anthem it was like the one stronghold, right? And I think that they Avengers have released updates such as they added Mega Hives, they added Tachyon Rifts, they added Kate, they're going to add Clint, and they're always releasing patches to fix these things. And I think the only reason people do compare Anthem and Avengers is because of the launch alone. Like they think day one Avengers is like Anthem because at its core it's really good, but it was plagued with a lot of problems. I think Avengers is slowly moving away from how, their launch was, because I mean, people who say there hasn't been any progression since launch is lying to themselves, right? But with Anthem, like the loading screens are always just as bad. Uh, Loot for me in Anthem wasn't the best, and I mean, it still isn't, But they're doing Gear 2.0, and the roadmap that Anthem released, they obviously didn't stick to at all.
Yeah.
And the thing is, Anthem gave us a lot of promises and met none of them. Whereas Avengers, their team is like, that we're not going to give you promises because we want to make sure that we can give them. And I think that people see Anthem and Avengers as like, oh, quiet, gonna die, stuff like that. But you need to look deeper than that, and you need to think to yourselves that there's a reason why Anthem burnt brighter in flames than maybe what Avengers would do if Avengers had the same fate, because Avengers is working on these things to release them and then they can tell you about it so then you know for sure it's coming. Whereas Anthem was like, yeah, we've got this roadmap, we've got this coming out, and it's like, you know what I mean? It's 2021 and we're still waiting for it, right? And
Yeah.
it's never going
Yeah.
to come now because it's done. So I think that I mean, I didn't play a load of Anthem, but from my experiences, that's kind of my thoughts on Avengers and Anthem all together.
Yeah, I mean, let me echo you quickly here. I think anyone who looks at the situation and sees the one-to-one compare parallel along the whole of both games is probably lying to themselves. I think Avengers out of launch was probably in a better state than Anthem was out of launch. We don't talk about Anthem bricking consoles, Anthem this, Anthem that. Like Anthem on launch was like pretty bad, you know.
Oh
And
yeah, I remember the bricking consoles thing.
yeah,
Yeah, that.
Anthem fell between Avengers and Cyberpunk in terms of like how bad that launch was. Anyone who says otherwise is probably lying. People just have very selective memories when it comes to these things. Um, in terms of the post-launch support, I remember pretty clearly that BioWare was kind of in everyone's face pre-launch about Anthem, right? I remember very active communication. I remember all this stuff, and then after launch, it's like BioWare fell into a hole and they never came out of it, right? And
Mm.
that probably is indicative of they knew what they had, and it was kind of just like pre-launch hype. And then afterwards, it's like fucking see you later, right? Now, obviously, I'm being very hyperbolic, but like in essence, it was like they just knew what was coming and they just kind of got out of the way of kind of the shitstorm that it was. Versus, and I always say be nice to your community managers because you have Andy coming on pretty much almost weekly since the game launched, and he's still front facing, right? He's still kind of taking in all that kind of, I don't want to say abuse, but kind of the frustration towards the game, right? If your community managers in a live service game aren't really there, I would be kind of more worried than what I am about the game. I am worried about the game in terms of communication, but I could still see an effort is there by the employees that are kind of interacting with the community, right? In terms of the end game content, Cataclysm, stuff like that, all we really got out of Anthem was Cataclysm. I don't necessarily see the comparisons there. Avengers has more end game content than Anthem does currently. Anthem's got like 4 cataclysms. Cataclysms are fine, but if you played Avengers or if you played Anthem, you can burn through them pretty quickly. I could fire up a cataclysm and go through it in like 7 minutes, depending on
Yeah,
the difficulty,
exactly.
right? Am I hitting Grandmaster difficulty? What, like, you know what I mean? Like there's still like Anthem had problems, but I think those problems were fundamental to the core of the game, right? Avengers has problems, but I don't think it's core to the game. I think it's just like they're misguided on their multiplayer that they were developing at launch. I think,
Yeah,
right? Like I don't think there's a 1-to-1. I think it's more so like one was very core to the game, and we can read that, right? We can read Jason Schreier break down the development of Anthem, right? Whether it's from development leading up to it or whether it's from like the E3 stuff, how they rebranded. like there's so much there with Anthem that I don't necessarily think is there with Avengers, unless like Jason Schreier comes up with an article and says like do 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 do, and I'm like, oh shit, like okay, dude, like yeah, it proved me wrong. I just think like the Avengers fiasco is just kind of like a little bit overblown because of situations like Anthem, because of situations like Destiny. People are tired of going through a situation where they buy a game and it's not necessarily all there, right? But I don't.
Well,
But mm,
sorry, I got excited with the point.
yeah, I mean, yeah, go for it, jump in.
I mean, here's the thing. Like, just going back to Outriders, when the servers struggled for like, wow, not even half an hour, right? When the demo went live, like, not even that long at all. People were going nuts on the Reddit, on Discord, being like, "Wow, this game's dead on arrival. It's awful. Fix your shit, devs, etc." And I'm like, guys, Jesus, it's a cross-play game. It's a free demo, which means anyone in the world can jump on it. Like, I'm pretty sure that you should give them at least a bit of leeway for this one. They fixed it in like minutes. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah,
but I think it's the fear of people seeing that and being like, "Oh, great, it's Anthem all over again. Oh, it's the Avengers launch all over again." Because again, Outriders, and maybe it's gamers' fault for being so easily, brought in again. But I think that Outriders screams confidence. Demo. They didn't call it a beta.
mm,
It's a demo, right? And well, it's not even a month away. More than a month away before launch, and I mean only just, but still. And I think that is a big showing of like Outriders being like, we're not going to be like the other looters. It's okay, we're here for you, right?
yeah,
And I think with Avengers, when obviously it was like a month before they had the beta, and people are like, well, it's a beta. How are they going to how are they going to change anything? They didn't by launch, and that was the
yep,
problem. And
yep,
and Anthem was very similar, and I think that people were so burnt out by Anthem, Avengers, Cyberpunk, that games like Outriders that promised them the world, having one problem that they fixed like really, really quick, really quick, but they
yeah,
still got hounded on. You know what I mean? And like
yep,
now any game that comes out after Cyberpunk, I think Cyberpunk was the final straw, is if they have one issue. So like people say the cover system in Outriders, right? It's wow, they're harsh with it. They're like, it's fucking shit system, doesn't work, broken. It's not broken. It's just not as great as a Division 2, right?
mm-hmm,
And yeah, I think that anyone who can release a looter and people give it a big thumbs up nowadays, it's impressive because when you hear looter,
yep.
minus Borderlands and Destiny and these MMORPGs that do well on PC, people are terrified of the genre because it's so cursed.
Well, I was gonna say
Like,
flammable. Yeah, curse works
yeah,
too. I mean, like, I hope people aren't taking away that like I'm making excuses for like Avengers and the state that it's in. I mean, everyone knows that the game isn't the greatest, right? Like we know I play it, Stardust plays it, listener, watcher at home, you play it. Like we understand that like the game isn't great. I think like in terms of like comparison sake though, I think Anthem was probably in a worse spot in terms of like the core identity versus Avengers, and I think that's where I think like the comparison there is fine. I just think like some people make like comparisons elsewhere between the two games, and it's and that's where like part of it is just like maybe it's just people cheering for the death of the game at some point, right? Versus like anything else. You know what I mean? Like, does that make sense a little bit?
yeah. I mean, the thing is, right? People want to compare Avengers to literally anything that they could compare it. So, like when Miles Morales was coming out, right? So this
Mm.
photo going around of this comic scene from Civil War Two, where Miles has Cap as he's like pretty much dead on the floor, and it's an image of like the Marvel's Avengers logo on Cap, and obviously the Miles Morales logo on Miles. and it's, Miles is the Avengers killer. I was thinking, but the different games. It's just the Marvel. Like, what is
Yeah.
wrong with you people? You know what I mean? And the thing is, I loved Miles, but what that does to me is it puts a bad taste in my mouth about Miles Morales, because it's like, you're all using this game to want the death of another one. We should want all Marvel games to thrive, because then you're going to see more on console rather than these microtransaction dirty mobile games.
Well, yeah, I
Like,
mean, in some regards, you can almost like extrapolate that to like tribalism at anything at that point, right? Like, we don't have to get too deep in it. I don't think this is the time or the place, but in some regards, it's like I want my thing to do well and I want your thing to do bad. You know what I mean? In some
yeah,
regards, that's really
exactly.
what it is, right? Like, fuck you for liking that. I'm better because I like this, so I hope your shit dies and I hope my shit survives. You know what I mean? And in some ways, you do see it, and at some point, like, I gotta start saying, like, if you don't like the game, it's okay to go away. Like, I
Yeah,
and I hope no one's taking offense to that, because like, if you don't like the game but you want it to be better, please stick around. Obviously your feedback is valuable, but if you're just sticking around to like meme on people and like to be a dick to people, there's lots of other games out there, man, and there's lots of other games that you guys will enjoy. Gaming does not have to center around one particular game. There's lots of other cool
yeah.
things out there for you, right? Life is too short, you know what I mean? But I think in some ways, like, you're 100% right. It's like, why use something to shit on something else, right? Like, they're both great games. They both satisfy different interests and niches and everything like that. Like, it's okay to say, like, I enjoyed Miles but I don't enjoy Avengers, or I enjoyed Avengers but I didn't enjoy Miles. Or if you're like most of us, I enjoyed both of them for different reasons, right? Like, and in some ways, I say that with Anthem. I enjoy Anthem. I enjoy Avengers. I see the issues with both games. I see some comparisons to be made, but in some ways, I think it's just off as well. And I think trying to compare them one to one is a false equivalence, and I don't necessarily think that's the way to do it. But I mean, like, it's a lot of it is just kind of like lost in the details when you talk about these things, right? Like, it's almost like the hot take generation. You know what I mean? Like, everyone just wants hot take after hot take after hot take, but no one really wants to contextualize a lot of what they're saying or provide examples to back up what they're saying. It's just like, I'm saying this, you're gonna say that, and we're just gonna butt heads, and that's it, right? It's the hot take generation, I call it, and in some ways, like, gaming is rife with that, like, from like news articles to content creators to people on Twitter. Like, it's almost like systemic throughout gaming in general. No.
I mean, uh, the thing is that people like to think that their opinion on a game like Avengers, right, that's easily shared by a lot of people, even people that really like the game,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll come into like the Discord, for example, right, and they'll be like, "This game, 6 months." Two archers,
Yeah.
like no Marvel locations, and all that. Like they're saying something brand new, right? And it's
Yeah.
like, Tricks Ridiculous is a guy that made like a great video talking about sort of the hate on this on Avengers, where it's like, if you're gonna provide some sort of feedback, don't be the guy that repeats the same shit and tells people that like there's two villains in Avengers, or three now, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
we know, we have eyes. Do you know what I mean? We can see these things,
Yeah,
but
of course.
there's deeper conversations to have about the problems of the game, like we were talking about with loot and rewards and stuff like that. Those are the things that matter most. If the loot in this game was excellent and the end game content was fun, even if it was the same bosses, it wouldn't be as bad. I think that the problems like, oh, two villains, etc., etc., is only worsened because they are at the moment the centerpiece of end game content that we do have, right?
Yep.
And you know, people come in and they'll say these things like, "Oh, gear is bad. This is bad. This cosmetic is bad," and it's like we have eyes to be able to make our own opinions of this. Like, yeah, okay, it might not be better than other games, but people may still like the way loot is here.
Mm-hmm.
People may still like, running the mega hives, tachyon rifts, so on and so forth. And obviously I mean, it's a popular opinion to not be into those things, but at the same time, there's people out there that like these things, and obviously, if you go into a place like the Avengers Discord, or if you go to a place like I think there's a low sodium Avengers Reddit and stuff like that. If you jump in there and you're like, this game is shit, it's got no villains and all that, and it's like, what's your point? What are you doing here? You know what I mean? And you're not spinning the wheel, you're not changing the tide or anything, you're not giving the devs anything new, you're just saying what everyone who's played the game since day one knows. And I think that in order to help this game, you've got to come out with something that's actually going to be uh, constructive, rather than stuff that they've no doubt heard about 20,000 times.
No, and I mean that's a great point, right? Constructive is like the best word that I think you can use when it comes to a lot of these things, right? I think
Yeah,
like I think when the devs are still committed to the game, constructive feedback is the best thing you can do, right? They're not going to take everything into consideration, right? Like, I could give them, you could give them, anyone could give them 1,000 ideas. Maybe they take none of it. Maybe they take some of it and combine it with others, right? But I think like at this point, like I don't think Avengers is going anywhere this year, point blank. I think the death of Avengers is greatly over exaggerated for 2021. This game's not going anywhere. So anyone who's like looking at this and seeing like Anthem and they're like, yeah, Avengers is next, like the Grim Reaper meme, like, and it's just leaving the Anthem doorway and it's knocking on the doorway, the door of Avengers, like it's not happening this year. So I think at this point, it's like, at this, just give them constructive feedback, explain to them what you like about the game and definitely what you don't like about the game, but what you would like to be improved upon, right? So if you don't like loot in the end game activities, talk about why, is the reward for your time not there? Is like loot in general not there for you? Do you want different kind of loot that plays differently, that impacts different skills? Like, do you want loot that kind of takes a more active role in your character development, I guess, is a good way to point it. There's so many conversations to be had under kind of neath that first level of criticism, right? And I think those are where the next like level of conversations need to be about the game, because I think that's where like the juicy bits are, right? As like the game kind of keeps going and chugs along, right? Like I think those are the conversations that need to be had in the public sphere. Whether it's on here on the Assemble channel or YouTubers or Twitch streamers or Twitter or Reddit, or Discord at this point. I think those are the conversations that we need to start engaging in, because those are the ones that probably will have an impact, rather than just kind of like the surface level. Anyone who plays the game sees the kind of criticisms that are there, right? Like no one's blind. Like everyone knows that, you know, like I'm tired of Abomination. I'm tired of Taskmaster. But, at this point, like all we could do in terms of the content is wait, but it's not like development's stopping. So like there's always room for improvement. There's always room for feedback. And I think that's where we have to go as a community, so we don't end up with something like Anthem, right? Like personally speaking, I think that's where we need to go as a community in terms of like our engagement with Crystal Dynamics. Do you think I'm off there, or do you think, what do you think?
I think that like with Avengers, people like to meme it really hard, and I think that people try and laugh at Avengers expenses without actually looking at like how good this game can be and how a lot of stuff it does well. I mean, combat's great, characters are good. I think there's a lot to enjoy here,
Yeah.
even if you're not a looter fan, because of that the campaign and stuff like that we spoke about last week. But I think that like I think that just a bit of constructive criticism, rather than using Avengers as sort of like a oh, it's gonna die sort of thing. Ha ha, am I right, friends? Sort of thing.
Right.
It's not cool, and it's the equivalent of like back when I was in school being into wrestling, when everyone's like, the footy last night, lads, am I right? Wrestling's gay or something like that.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
childish stuff like that. And I think that like in Avengers at the moment is very similar to that, where people are sort of like, "Oh, you like Avengers?" And it's like, well, why not? Why not? You know what I mean? And the people
Yep.
that don't like Avengers, you tend to find they're very obsessed with Avengers. Now that tells me that the game must have done something for you. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people, the reason why there was a drop in players, a big drop being that is that those people decided they didn't like it and then moved on, or maybe they'll come back for like characters or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But you find yourself where you've got a lot of people a lot of negative people the most saying like this sucks, but here I am still on the Avengers Discord, here I am still playing it, grinding loot and stuff for the next content, here's my cool builds, oh also this game sucks. Right, and it's like, right, okay, oh, what are you trying to prove it to yourself at this point, like what's going on? Right.
Yeah, I mean,
And
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
you're 100% correct in that one. That like, there are people out there who play the game, or they liked it, but then something along the way, and like I say it, like I'll say it, like the multiplayer does feel like the wheels fell off after the campaign, right? That's something they need to
Mm.
improve. So maybe there's some people who like really enjoyed the campaign, and then they go and play the multiplayer, and they're like, yeah, this ain't for me, right? But like they want to see it improved, but maybe they just go about it the wrong way, right? But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's just like, live and let live. You know what I mean? Like, if someone enjoys something, let them enjoy it. They're not hurting anybody. Um, even if it's not for you, like not everything has to be for you, right? Like,
Exactly, yeah.
let me segue into the Ultimate Iron Man skin here, because I think this is a perfect opportunity to kind of talk about live and let live when it comes to Ultimate Iron Man. So this past week, guys, Ultimate Iron Man was released in the store. It's based off a mini series in the Ultimate Universe. Correct me if I'm wrong. And if I'm correct on again, uh, it's because the suit that they chose was actually retconned in the universe. Am I correct on that one?
Um, well, the comics with this armor's Ultimate Iron Man 2. So my assumption would be, as someone who doesn't particularly know too much about the Ultimate Universe, is that there's obviously two suits. One of them's got more of like a triangular jawline like thing, where that was like his Ultimates thing, and I think something may have happened to that armor, and he went for the Baymax looking armor that we saw in the shop, I believe.
Right. Yes. 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 Okay.
Am I right with that? Am I right?
I to be
Or do
honest with
you?
you, I don't know the Ultimate Universe myself. I just kept hearing that this armor was retconned. So like it was an armor that historically wasn't liked in the comics. Like people didn't catch on to it in the comics, so they retconned it. In terms of the story surrounding the armor, I have no idea. So I'm just gonna assume you're right on this one, unless proven otherwise.
Oh, I'm gonna get told off in the comments.
That's all right, dude. If you can survive the X-Men fiasco, you can survive the Ultimate Iron Man fiasco.
Don't bring it up again.
so so the reason why I bring this up is because this armor was very divisive in the community. This was probably, in terms of like, so there's been skins before. Iron Knight comes to example where the hype surrounding it made everyone divisive around the skin. This skin, was, we were just told a new skin is coming out, and then we show this, and the divisiveness is around the skin itself, I believe, right? And
Yeah.
we're starting to see the conversation surrounding comic, what is it, comic base versus comic accuracy, I believe it is now. Um, someone popped into my comments and said that, and point blank, I'll be very upfront and honest. I thought the skin was fine. I bought it. I mean, I was playing Iron Man a little bit last night, and just kind of seeing like his, like the teddy bear head kind of around, like it to me it was just like a fun skin. I looked at it and I was like, yeah, this is fine, but I mean, so like admittedly, I'm not like a stickler for like cosmetics. Like there are some I like, there are some I don't like. And every weekly blog, I'm pretty upfront about, hey, I actually kind of like this skin. Hey, like I kind of hate this skin. Like I don't look at anything. I go, this, like, this fucking sucks. Like blah blah blah. It's like, this was all right. This was pretty bad. Like, but like in terms of Ultimate Iron Man, I actually looked at it. I was like, I had to sit with it for a little bit, right? Like And then once I
Yeah.
sat with it and I looked at it, I was like, this actually is fine. Like, it's a fine skin. Like, it's not going to be everyone's greatest. You know, it is kind of reuse of assets, which we can have that conversation. Um, but in terms of like just what it looks like, I was like, this is a fine skin. It's whatever, you know. Like, I don't understand like the whole kind of debacle around the Ultimate Iron Man skin. You know, like it just have a laugh like more than anything, right? Like it's a dorky skin,
I
right?
was gonna
It's
say, I think the helmet's cute. Like, I actually think is quite adorable. Like,
mm,
especially when like I've seen my friends like Riffian and Outer Rims do these photo shoots where they try and make him look epic, but it just looks like a little toddler trying to do superhero poses, and it's just like, ah, like
yeah,
it's just because of the eyes, and I think that like the big goofy helmet. I
yeah,
think it's just I like it. You know, it's a funny, weird comic book accurate skin, and I think that you like okay, you might not like it, but obviously there was people in the comments in the replies. I mean, on the Twitter post, being like, oh, they fucked up the helmet. No, they didn't. You need to look at the. You need to, you know what I mean. You need to make sure before you make comments like that. And I think that then people are like, oh, not that one. And it's like, right, okay. So where's the goalpost? Do you know what I mean? Do you want comic accurate skins or do you want your comic accurate skins? You
yeah,
know? And I think that like there's gonna be a load of people that instantly knew what that skin was. I wasn't one of them. I know what the ultimate Iron Man skin is that people expected. Like I mentioned, like the triangular
mm,
jawline, because it was in the Ultimates. Um, and I just like, and I used to be into the Ultimates, but I don't know the story behind the big goofy looking armor.
right,
But then I researched it a little bit, and I was like, oh right, so that's where it comes from, and after looking at it then side by side, I was like, okay, I can see why they went with that. It's pretty, it's pretty funny. And later down the road, because now there's a big one for the regular Ultimates one, they could, release that, and then that would do really well because people are like, fuck yeah, I got the Ultimates one I wanted, right?
yeah,
And if they take advantage of that, maybe they could be onto a really good seller in a couple of weeks, for example. So
yeah.
I'm all for it.
I mean, we can have a conversation about like the asset usage, because like they are getting their miles out of the assets they've already made. I mean, you know, one of the things I look at when it comes to a lot of the skins people want, myself included, is like, are there already assets in the game that they can rework or reuse with, to kind of make the skins that we want? You know what I mean? And I think the
Mm.
conversation surrounding it, let's go deeper one level, right? So right now the conversation at the surface level is like the skins, right? Like it's not the skins I want, it's not the skins you want. Maybe if they're not based off the comics one to one, they do some original, like they do tweak a few things for an original kind of take on that skin, right? So when you take it one step deeper, we start looking at asset usage and like, asset flips or whatever. Um, do we have to start wondering, do they have the resources right now to remake, to like make brand new assets for these skins for existing characters, right? Or are all those people more focused on Spider-Man? Maybe at one point they were more focused on Hawkeye. um Now Black Panther, right? Like, what do you think of that kind of conversation, instead of just like, this isn't the comic skin I want?
I mean, when I think about the heroes in this game and reused assets and using them to make outfits, Iron Man seems to be the easiest one
Mm-hmm.
because like with Hulk, there's only so much you can do with what you have already. With Widow, we've seen it. There's only so much you can do. Cap rarely gets skins in the shop unless they're very casual stuff. Like we saw it. Gosh, was it?
Project
Yeah, two
Rebirth.
weeks ago.
Yep.
Huh?
No, the skin was called Project Rebirth. Sorry.
Oh right, okay. And same with Thor. Whereas Iron Man, he's got so many variations of suits and so many different suits that it works really well, which is why I believe we've been seeing like two new Iron Man skins lately, and I think that like you said, they're working on Spider-Man stuff. They're working on Panther stuff. You know, is that potentially the reason for these like reused assets, just to, just to what's the word? Remove the weight of the burden at the moment while they're working on other stuff. And I think that, with Spider-Man, at the very least, it's scary because obviously he's PlayStation exclusive, but he has the most rabid fan base in the entire world. And I don't mean that as a bad way. I mean, there's just a lot of passionate Spider-Man fans out there that, like, if they don't like his iconic, say when they reveal it, then everyone will know about it. If they release marketplace skins for Spider-Man and it's like reused assets, like, say for example they release the symbiote suit and it's literally a black recolor of his, the suit that they release with him, that's meh. People aren't going to be into that, and I think
Yeah.
that people will be least accepting of that for Spider-Man and Panther and characters that we start getting more of than they would be like a Kate Bishop or the heroes we've got now, because we're already used to that, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
they release a Black Panther skin that's uh like blue and orange
Yeah.
as a recolor. It's
Yeah.
just not going to work out. And I think that that's probably a concern that the costume team's got at the moment, where they're like, okay, we need to start building some stuff from the ground up here.
Yeah. Well, and I mean that's the thing too, right? So like I guess like what yeah, I mean like that's a perfect way to say it, because like when you look at everything one layer under, like, you could move the criticism to a more direct approach to it rather than just saying like it's an asset flip. Well, why isn't an asset flip? And then you kind of start peeling the layers of the onion back to really kind of get to where the meat of the issue is, right? Like obviously when I know people on the other side who are very upset with this skin. They see Solaris, kind of some things were changed very slightly with Solaris and then New Helmet. They're like, wow, this is like whatever.
Mm.
I think one of the things that we need to think about is like why do the skins we get only have small variations from other skins, right? Like that's a conversation I think is valuable, instead of just like kind of looking at the skin and saying like this is a reused asset, right? You know what I mean? Like, so I think when we start talking about like, then you can start extrapolating that to like a Spider-Man or a Black Panther, right? Like, is this an issue that's always going to plague them, right? Like, do they only make certain amount of assets for a character with the idea that they can rework them in the future for new skins? Is that kind of like the game plan of the costume or art department? That'd be an interesting conversation to have. That'd be an interesting conversation for maybe like an art director to come on, wink wink, hello, because that's actually a very interesting question to ask them, right? Few ways to kind of look at it is, how do you take comic book kind of skins and how do you then put them into your world, right? Because every game or every comic or every movie has an art direction, has a style of the world they're going to. So that's a question that could be valuable, right? How do you take like, volume 2 page 4 of Captain America in his bright blue suit with the chainmail and everything, the wings? How do you take that and then how do you put it into your world? Maybe removing some of the fun things that people like about it, or how do you? I just lost my train of thought. I just lost my train of thought. Oh no.
No.
No, I mean, I guess that's the point. Like, you can have these conversations of, inspiration and how do you apply them to your world, or how do you look at kind of, the assets you're making. Oh, there you go. I'm getting it. I'm getting it again. When you
Okay.
make these assets and these costumes at the base level, do you plan ahead? Do you have a list of 20, 30 costumes that, based on the assets that you make, can you reasonably make these costumes ahead, like in a time that is satisfying? I don't think that's the case, but that might be a very interesting conversation to have when it comes to future planning of your production, right? Because like you're almost future proofing your work. But as we kind of seen with the community a little bit, maybe the way that they may approach that, which is building some assets out, reassembling them, maybe changing some details here and there, which are small details, maybe that's not enough. But I think under the surface layer, there's a meat there that we should get into, and I would love the opportunity to kind of talk to someone on the art department, because I think, without being antagonistic, those are really good conversation points to kind of talk about, because I think there's a lot of information there that is probably lost in the weeds a little bit. And I think that is like a very interesting conversation to have because it's almost such a pain point for a lot of the community, right? Costumes are a pain point for a lot of the people. So why not kind of talk about like how those things work, right? How do they go from comic book to the game, or how do they look at asset building and how do they look at costume building? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. On the dev stream the other night, they were talking about how they're going to be having a conversation and mix up the marketplace a little bit, and changing how much they put in every week and a bunch of stuff like that. I think my thing with that is that they put themselves in an awkward spot because obviously you've got the how much is it at the top for featured? You've got like usually three skins, a takedown, and something at the top as well. So you got five stuff at the top, you got stuff at the bottom. I would be indifferent to just three skins, right? And you can go on and get the takedowns and stuff whenever you fancy it. And the emotes whenever you fancy it. But with the skins, I would try and make new skins as much as you can, and then just be like, okay, here's three skins, or here's one skin, or here's two skins. Like as long as it's new,
mm-hmm.
then you have the opportunity to sell a lot. Whereas if you've got, say, Ultimate Iron Man, right, and
Yep.
say it was literally built from the ground up, but then next to it you've got a recolor of Widow, you've got a recolor of Kamala, recolor of Thor. It almost taints it because it's like you've got
Interesting.
you've got this marketplace, and the only one thing that is decent is Ultimate Iron Man, but then you look at all these different recolors next to it, and you look at all these sort of the things that like these nameplates or takedowns that you can get if you click on that, like their own section and stuff like that. It's like when the Cap skin came out, and they had Iron Man skin that's always been with Tony in his own character section, and it was a bunch of recolors. It's like, if you want that to be the featured skin of the week and the one that you're proud of, then just slap that on the front. Have like your takedowns, your emotes and stuff available to purchase whenever you want. So whatever. Don't put that on the featured thing, and just have this big bam. Okay, we've got two skins this week. So, um, Widow and Kamala are getting new skins next week, this week,
Yes.
whatever.
Correct. Correct.
And
Correct.
and so in that case, what I'd do is I would slap those two skins on, featured skins, and that's it. That's it. If that's all you've got new, don't don't ruin the appeal of your fresh new skins by surrounding it with shit. Essentially, right?
Yeah, I
And
mean that's interesting that like the perception is built around kind of what you're surrounding yourself. It's almost like the property value, you know? Like have you ever heard like like you're even though you got like a good house, like the property like all the houses around you look like dog shit, so like your property value goes down with it. Like and essentially like that's what you're saying, right? Like if everything was good, then everything goes up in conjunction with each other. That's a really interesting point. I've never actually heard that before. You might be the first one that's ever said that because your approach to the marketplace is probably one of the more interesting ones. I think everyone that I've talked to wants to go the other way with the marketplace, right? Which is like just completely open it up. You're saying still go with the weekly rotation, but make sure that if you're putting things out there, it's high quality shit, you know?
Yeah, like only. And here's the thing: like, if you've only got one skin to release, then just slap the one skin on. Just. So say like Andy mentioned how he's going to start trying to announce when new skins are coming. It's a great, and they're clearly proud of what this Widow and Kamala skin are, or else they wouldn't talk about them at all. They just release them out into the wild, right? So they're clearly new skins in the same. It could be in the same vein Ultimate Iron Man is with reused assets, but it's still new.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's new, then it's what we want. So just show it off, smack it on the front. Don't surround it with your usual filler. Just don't do it, and keep it, nice and shiny on the front because. Like when you do your weekly blog ones, for example, right, and like you zoom in and stuff like that. If Ultimate Iron Man was just nice there in the middle, oh, and then you've got these own separate menus where you can look at the nameplates, all of them or all the emotes, and it's just like featured skin this week, Ultimate Iron Man, and it was legendary, right? So it was like
Yes. it was
almost
14.
15.
Yeah, it's 1400. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that alone, it makes it look special. It makes it seem like, oh, I need to get that. It's because it's not surrounded by, and it might make people appreciate it more if the devs only, or the costume people or whatever, only put something out there if it's new and fresh and not just a recolor. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
I
it's
think that that's a good idea.
yeah, that's really like I said, that's really interesting. Like your perception of that is really interesting. I'd have to see that in play and see if that would actually work. I could see it in my head working, but I think as like a consumer, I'd have to see it in actual like reality before I could say, whether that would work or not. But in my head, I'm like, yeah, it could probably work. It's just, take
Yeah.
something from like my head to like reality. I'd have to actually see it. But that's a
Wh-
really interesting way. Yeah. All right. Well,
What
fuck.
what 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 I would do as well is obviously because the recolors are in all these games, right? And some people don't want I don't know, orange Kamala. They want a silver variant, like we've
Hmm.
seen before. So cool. All right. So what you do is we've got these character featured blocks, right? Use them. Use them better. So put all the recolors in, all of them, right? Don't put the original ones in because you can rotate them as much as you want, but maybe you can have the recolors in so that, like, and obviously you cheapen them up a little bit. You explain where they're from, but like maybe if you want to rotate them into the featured bit, like I'm trying to think. What was something Ultimate Patriot Caps one at launch?
Yeah.
The really cool one with the
Hmm.
yeah. You could put like Ultimate Patriot back, but then you've got obviously all the recolors of it in the thing. So like if you don't like the color of the main one and you don't fancy waiting, you can splash out on some recolors. There you go, but you don't have the real thing, right? But you could still spend it on some recolors in the character shop, which the recolors are always there, always, and the emotes are always there and the nameplates are always there, but in the main thing, as you open it up, you're just smacked in the face with this glorious brand new skin that isn't surrounded by the rest of this filler shit, and that's what I think they should do.
Well, it's interesting you bring up recolors because apparently Miller was talking in a similar vein to this last night on his stream, and he said in the new skins that they've added to the game, they've not added any recolors to them. So like what you get is what you get. So like it seems that the if that holds true from here on out, it seems like recolors are kind of gone. Which makes me wonder and believe if recolors could be bundled into the skin you buy and you just get the variants of them at that point, right? And then
Yeah.
you just kind of call recolors it at that point, right? If they're not adding new recolors, then maybe the ones that are existing in the game currently are just kind of like, yeah, you buy the skin, you get all the recolors at that point, right? Like it's really interesting that they've yeah, and like obviously I think there was pretty much, I won't say universal, but like a lot of people didn't like recolors. I myself had come out and said like recolors are just kind of not where it is. But
Yeah.
it's interesting now that like they've not added recolors for any of the new ones. So it's like what happens to the existing ones, right? Like, are you still going to charge for them? Like, or, when they do this marketplace talk, right? Because Phil, when, as you said, they're going to have like more discussions about the marketplace, change it up, try something different, do recolors just kind of like, but then how do you kind of reimburse people if they've bought a recolor, like it it's very murky territory when you talk about skins in general, I think, and you start talking about recolors or the marketplace layout because like once again not everyone's going to be happy, like no matter which way you go, left, right, center, someone is going to be very unhappy with you. And it's and I don't have the perfect answer for marketplace at this point. I don't do they just open it up and like you could buy any skin you want, recolors are reduced permanently by like 70%, or like what do you do? And I think your idea could work, I think my idea could work. Whether they do either of those ideas or they do something else remains to be seen. But I think there definitely is some conversation to be had regarding the marketplace and skins in general as we start getting into Spider-Man and we start getting into Black Panther and Hawkeye fans. I'm not leaving you out, but I think when we start looking at recolors, like you said, a symbiote suit, just kind of like a black suit, right? Like, we're like, and in some ways, Spider-Man fandom will eat this game alive if they do that, right? Spider-Man fandom
Yeah.
will absolutely eat this game alive if they have a misstep with Spider-Man, and by just kind of having like a back in black suit, or not having the symbiote suit, like they will absolutely eat this game alive, and I think that is going to be like a big thing. If Spider-Man does well with that Spidey fandom, maybe you see people kind of turn their heads to the game now and like, oh shit, Spider-Man, and he's really well done, and the costumes are really well done. I don't think anything's gonna rival Insomniac, but I think is if they do well, more so than they have at launch, more so than they have after the few months at launch, then I think then we'll start having a different perception of the marketplace and have a different perception of the skins in general. But I think there definitely is some conversation to be had regarding future implementation, future assets, and that's one of those things where whether it's in a dev stream or if someone has an opportunity to talk to an art director or someone in charge of that art costume department, I think those are conversations that could be very cool. Once again, not in an
Mm,
antagonistic way, but I think there's so much there to kind of uncover. And there's
yeah.
so there's so much meat to that bone. I would just love the opportunity just to pick at it and to just kind of hear what goes on in some of these decisions.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've had this conversation, I think, before with Spider-Man, where it's like, Insomniac, of course, they've got like all these different Spider-Man costumes for free when you buy the game, minus the
Mm.
DLC ones. So like, there's a lot there. It's cool. So say Spider-Man 2099, right? That's unlockable. If they put that in the marketplace and they charge you for it, how you know what I mean? How are they going to justify that? Because they, as much as in my mind, they're not competing because two different games. It's still Spider-Man in the
Yeah.
video game universe when Insomniac is the standard bearer now, right? So obviously you charge 1400 for Spider-Man 2099, and Insomniac, obviously they have theirs as like an unlockable thing that's going to upset a lot of people. So then how do you make money off Spider-Man when he's released? Because he's such a merchandised, uh, what's the word? He's such a profitable, there you go. Such a profitable character with all his suits over the years, but you can't really profit off it without being like, well, Insomniac didn't do that. What are you doing?
Yeah. I mean, the Spider-Man thing, as we kind of reach back to the start of the conversation, Spider-Man is going to be such an interesting scenario, and I don't envy anyone who has to kind of um, follow through with these decisions, not make the decisions, but follow through with them, because they're like, once again, there's going to be a lot of people who are very unhappy. Anything to do with Spider-Man, right? If you look at Spider-Man taking up resources, you're unhappy. If you're looking at Spider-Man being exclusive, you're unhappy. If you're looking at Spider-Man and the skins and comparing it to Insomniac, you're probably going to be unhappy, right? So like, what do you have left? Combat? Like, there's so much
Yeah.
with Spider-Man that's like loaded, and yeah, good luck, because um in my honest opinion, as fun as Spider-Man is probably going to be, it just seems like this deal has totally just shit the bed, start to finish. Like, it's a total nightmare. And um I know I'm gonna play Spider-Man, and I'm sure Spider-Man is gonna be a lot of fun, and I'm gonna enjoy him. But in the back of my mind, I'm gonna think about, like, what did it cost to get Spider-Man in this game, and in honesty, the speculation is a lot. Like, the bill has a lot on it for Spider-Man.
Yeah, like, and here's the thing, right? If Spider-Man's such a, which I mean, it sounds like he's such a burden. Is he gonna have that passion put into him because he's a burden? Because there's a rush to get him out for contractual obligations, and obviously, if it's not like 100% like with love, people, especially Spider-Man fans, are going to notice that, and it's going to be again even more problems than what it's worth, because then you've got PlayStation exclusivity that's going to annoy people. You have Obviously, I don't think he'll be bad. I personally, but just in this universe, in my hypothetical universe, he is right. Then you've also got people, Spider-Man fans, who are going to be upset by that. So then you've got this double wave, yeah, and that's why, like, even though this deal might have been difficult, you've just got to make sure that you've stacked it with love.
True. Good point. All right, well, let's talk about another thing with love here as our last topic of the day, and let's talk Outriders. Um, so let me ask you a question, and let me just get started off on the right foot here. How much do you enjoy Outriders going from Avengers to Outriders right now?
I'll be honest, I'm loving it. Like I've
Mm-hmm.
been on one class, Trickster, and I'm just really enjoying it. It doesn't feel AAA. I'm a bit worried having to spend 60 British pounds on it, but it's at the moment just from the demo alone, I'm definitely on board with it. It's good fun. It's good fun.
Okay, so for transparency's sake, I actually didn't really enjoy it that much. I'm gonna go back and probably try it again. It wasn't my type of game, but for Stardust, um, what is what is one thing that if you could nail down one thing that um Outriders does better than Avengers, what is it in your mind?
Right, well, it's funny you say that because I have the exact message that I had wrote about this very same topic. So I'm going to read it word for word.
Okay.
In Outriders, even without gear, my powers make me feel capable. I'm able to get in there, go crazy, explosions and stuff everywhere, using my powers often. But I can still die. You just don't feel that fear. It makes me feel like a superhero more than Avengers does, to be honest.
Okay. Let me ask you a follow up here.
Here we go.
Do you think that the differences between Outriders and Avengers can be fixed with Gear 2.0, or do you feel like that is indicative of the character design that is already baked into the game of Avengers?
Oh right, now I see what you mean. I think that Gear 2.0, I'll be perfectly honest, I don't think Gear 2.0 is going to spin the wheel much when it comes to the core gameplay because again, Outriders come out after Avengers. I'm not expecting Avengers to just change its core thing and allow us to do heroics every, you know, all the time because heroics in Avengers I think more powerful than skills are in Outriders, which is why in Outriders you can spam them after just a short amount of time, whereas in Avengers, unless you've got a build, you've got to wait for a little bit. But I think that the design philosophy is different, and I don't think that gear would change that. To be perfectly honest.
No, I mean that's fine. So do you think then, in terms of just the feeling of being powerful, do you think then it's just something that Avengers will always lack in your mind in comparison to Outriders, unless they kind of redo some of these characters, with quality of life updates or have you like what have you?
I think that like okay, so I run into a room as Captain America,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm getting shot from every angle, and my cap's like struggling to keep up his balance. And I have to make sure that my build's ready, and I have to be blocking everything, and I have to be scared of this because I'm, and this and that. And I don't go in there feeling like Captain America, who has a chance to wipe everyone out because there's a very easy chance that something off screen or something out of nowhere will just zap you and kill you. Whereas, like in Outriders, I feel like I can literally dive right in. Like I was playing with a Calyx and Sonic photo the other day, and literally every room we went into, I went you and just jumped right into the middle of everyone, and and most of the time I survived, but I was still on low health. But I never felt at a point where like you know, oh, I definitely wasn't able to do that, And obviously, I'm not saying like, oh, make me overpowered, right? Because there needs to be challenge. And the only reason Outriders probably makes me feel like that is because it's the demo, so it's very early on. I understand that completely, but I think that with Avengers, it feels less like a power fantasy and more like I am these heroes, but all the enemies are at my level. Whereas, like in Outriders, if I'm fighting enemies who aren't a lower level than me, or at least on the same level, I'm pretty confident in it But if I'm fighting like a captain or an altered, like the boss fight in the Outriders demo, I got wrecked. There are times where I got wrecked, but that was because I went in those fights thinking like I would do with minions, if that makes sense. Whereas in Avengers, there's always that fear that you could get like shot from a tiny little bullet when you're like low on health or something, and that's it, you're dead. And it's
I
just one of
see.
them things.
I was gonna say I see exactly what you're talking about. You're talking about like the encounters, right? Where like in Outriders, the encounters are built around making you feel powerful. Like you go in there and the whole engagement from start to finish is to make you feel powerful. Whereas in Avengers, whether you're talking about the number of enemies, the abilities of the enemies, stagger in some cases, modifiers which can impact some of these abilities that the enemies will throw you, you're each one of those things has an impact on that power fantasy to where at some point it's not a power fantasy anymore. It's just kind of like you going up against a bunch of robots and like in some cases, unless you're running a one shot build, you got to feel very you got to play very cautiously, right? So like the encounters
Yeah,
are set up very differently between the games. I see exactly what you're saying. Like the encounters are dictating the style of play. Where it's like if they change the encounters, maybe in Avengers, maybe you can start living out that power fantasy without having to
yeah.
change too much about gear or character design or anything. Interesting. Okay, that's actually a really interesting point
Well,
there.
here's the thing with Outriders is that obviously because it's health on kill, which again I'm not expecting Avengers to just go right next update we're stealing that. You know what I mean? I'm not. But with Outriders is the way to survive is to get in there and go to town, right? And there's upgrades on your like I say heroics, I mean skills, but pretty much like heroics.
Mm-hmm.
So like I've got with my trickster, I've got this blade that like does great damage. Even on armor at level 7, you can get upgrades. It's like 20% extra damage on your temporal blade, which is what it's called, right? So like say I just had a load of gear pieces that stacked up to like a bunch of damage on this blade, I could wipe into a boss and potentially one shot them, but it would take like a lot of effort. And I think that the thing is with Outriders is that in order for you to stay alive, you have to be a badass and wipe everyone out. That's why it's it feels great to play like that, and you're rewarded by playing like that. Whereas in Avengers, I run in as the Hulk and I do Hulk like things and I get bullied for it and get smacked about by adaptoids and then lasered and staggered and then I get shot out of nowhere and I'm dead, right? Whereas like in Avengers you have to go through a certain way. So like if I was going to jump into enemies, I couldn't just do it. I'd have to put on Bone Shaker, do this, do that. I'd have to make sure, I'm parrying. I'd have to make sure that my defense is like really up. I have to be like, there is no escape from
Mm-hmm.
being backhanded by adaptoids. Whereas in like Outriders, I'm low on health. Okay, let me quickly run up to this goon here, jump in, punch him, he's dead. Grab the health off that. All right, I'm going to run straight back in. There is no breathing space, and for me, I'm quite an impatient guy. The only game I can handle waiting for an enemy is Division 2. Otherwise, I like to run straight in there. Just but with Avengers, you can't really do that unless you've got a build specific to that. Like how many times in Mega Hives have you sort of gotten comfortable, or you've gotten to a point where you're like, right, I want to get this done. So you get into the fold of it, and all of a sudden out of nowhere you get lasered dead.
Well, it's funny you say that because on Monday, sorry, it was Tuesday. That literally happened. I was like, I fired up my stream and I was like, all right, guys, I'm gonna play Mega Hive. We're gonna do a few floors of cap, and then before you know it, I'm like, kind of talking with chat a little bit, and then like I'm dead. I'm like, oh, sick. I guess I'm
Yeah,
not doing
yeah,
with cap
it's
this week,
just
right? Yeah, I mean that's interesting that you bring it up. What do you see yourself in? Now, I'm not going to hold you to the fire on this one, but with the two different play styles, what do you see yourself playing more as you kind of go into like the second half of 2021? Is kind of like the cautious play style of Avengers kind of something that you feel is going to kind of draw you in, or is the running gun, health on kill, like the up in your face kind of Outriders approach? Do you feel like that's going to kind of draw you in more this year?
right. Okay. um, The thing is, I love the IP of Avengers, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot everyone should do really, but
Mm.
like, and obviously with heroes like Spider-Man on the way, I want to get really into that, and I want to really, get into Avengers when new content shows up because I love Marvel and I love the core of Marvel's Avengers, so I do enjoy it. It's just that when it comes to the run and gun, health on kill, insane builds, all these explosions everywhere. Like there's a gun that every bullet you shoot shoots lightning,
Yeah.
right? Like it sounds like some sort of douchebag would make up, or like it happened in a Michael Bay film. Like it's insane the potential here, and I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that's my kind of gameplay. But then you've also got Marvel, and it's like. And with Marvel and with Avengers, I'm so in this community, and I've been there since day one and stuff like that. I think that when Outriders comes out, I'll definitely be covering it. I'll definitely be enjoying it. But as soon as something new in Avengers comes out, I would say that would probably take a lot of my time until that wears thin, and
Yep.
then it's back to Outriders. I think.
So it sounds like in a perfect world, if you just kind of merged Marvel IP with Outriders gameplay, like you'd be kind of set. Like, is that kind of right on point there?
Yeah. Like if I could run in as like the Hulk and still have fear, still have fear that something could kill me, but not like, but I could do something about him. By doing something about, I don't mean cower away from my foes and break a box. I mean, as in just keep smashing, right? And
Yeah.
then that'll give me health. I think that would be perfect. And I made like again. I made a video on this about exotics and stuff like that, and I thought of something called Immortal Heart, where like exotics in Gear 2.0 maybe could give you a thing where you put Bone Shaker on and Hulk doesn't stagger at all, right? At all, but he still loses a bit of health, but
Yeah.
like he doesn't
The,
stagger at
the
all, and he doesn't lose as much health, so that if you've got that gear piece, you could run in, boom, Bone Shaker, then you're ready to go. Do you know what I mean? And then you're the Hulk, pretty much officially. So if your design philosophy isn't gonna uh, work that way, then you could always have grindable gear to let people play that way.
Interesting. Gear that changes playstyles of the characters. Interesting. I think you're onto something there. Personally, I think that's kind of where they need to go with gear, right? I think,
Mm.
as we kind of tie down this conversation here, I think, um, moving from percentage based gear, you're comparing percentages of different perks. I think getting gear that kind of changes the playstyle of characters, changes the playstyle of some heroics. I think that's kind of the way the game needs to move, to kind of embrace maybe different play styles, to embrace different ways of carrying out that power fantasy to a degree, right? Like to a degree, you should feel powerful playing these characters, but without breaking the core fundamental design philosophies of the game, right?
Yeah.
And I think if you can keep everything within the box, but make sure you take up as much box as you can, right? Like, and by doing new gear or changing gear that changes the character and the skills or heroics, whatever you call them, like I think there's ways that you can play around in that box, and I think that's kind of where they need to go, because I think they're going to start seeing is that, like, even with Destiny, for example, like give me stuff that just changes the way I do things a little bit, right? Like I think there's so much out there that they could draw from in inspiration. I think Outrider is going to be another one that they can draw inspiration from, that I think they definitely need to start looking at, maybe heroics changing different things, so that people, you get something, you get a drop, for example, and it does, what you said, you know this item gives you two different kind of procs or whatever, but then that third one is like, when you hit Bone Shaker, you don't stagger anymore. You know how many Hulk mains would be running that? Like that'd be like an instant. That'd be like a best in
Yeah,
slot.
yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Depending on the gear rolls with
Exactly.
that,
Yeah.
that'd be a best in slot, right? But then with a different slot, you could have a different thing. Like there's so many different ways to do it, and I definitely think, if Outriders is already doing these things, then I think Avengers, to keep it with the core identity, definitely needs to start looking at that and saying, when we look at our gear, how do we make our gear more fun? And I think that's kind of the conversation to be had there. You know,
Yeah.
just before we wrap up this Outriders thing, you know, as you've kind of been playing and you've been enjoying it, if you could take one thing from Outriders, just rip it out and you just place it in Avengers, what is it? Whether it's, you know, health on kill, maybe it's the itemization. Like, what is it that you just wish that you could just rip out and just put in?
I think. Oh wow. I think that the. All right, two things. Can I have two things?
You can have as many things as you want.
All right then. In that case, I would like it to be a system similar to Outriders. So there's obviously you've got mods in Outriders. So if there's a gun that I have that like it doesn't consume ammo on critical hits, I can remove that from my gun and place it in another one that I feel would benefit it. So say it's in an assault rifle, I can think, I'll get more critical hits on my auto shotgun, rip it out, put it in. I'd love to be able to do that with Avengers gear. If I get a perk that's like I don't know, 20% critical hit gives you damage buff, but the stats are meh. Like they're like intensity and resilience, and I don't want that. I can rip that perk out with some upgrade modules or polycolor and throw it into a gear piece that has the stats that I want, but I have to dismantle that gear that I've just ripped it from. So probably more similar to Division actually. So
Okay.
that's a different idea. That's but yeah. So but that and health on kill.
Okay.
Absolutely health on kill. And obviously, you know, if you're gonna go with these crazy exotics, like I thought of another one where Hulk's hands, no matter what, always give off gamma, right? Always, as in, you know, he's like anytime you hold rage, any strike that he does is gamma related without the obviously with the gear piece. But it's not like a replacement for battery damage. You know what I mean? Because obviously you could say, well, look, you've got gear that says combo finishers could do gamma. I mean, like literally, he could like jump up, do that single punch to the ground, gives puts gamma on the enemy, and obviously then you've got a chance to do battery damage. But if you want to buff up the enemies more and give us that funner gear, you could totally do that. And obviously health on kill means that you could put it in a position where like you could smother us with enemies, you know, and they could be tougher and stuff, and you could even allow us to be bullied a little bit. But if you've got health on kill, that incentivizes people to just run in and try and be as heroic as possible, you know.
Yeah, no, that's interesting because it'd be interesting to kind of balance that, like that kind of idea with, like, you know, as we're talking about Clone Labs earlier and how you kind of you know, as we're just saying, like one shot builds with Clone Labs are probably not going to be in play, but like, you know, maybe like one shot builds but with like health on kill, you know what I mean? Like do you then reinvigorate like one shot kill builds with that? Like it's interesting when you start kind of piecing together kind of these puzzles and trying to like dig through like what would be like the best way to do it, because like there's so many good
Yeah,
ideas, but like to try and fit them in that puzzle that's already kind of built, you know, obviously take one piece out, try to put another piece in, does it fit correctly? Like there's so many ways to kind of look at that. But yeah, I definitely think, you know, at the core of this conversation, I definitely think that gear just needs to kind of do more than what it does currently, right? And I think most people would agree with that. I think anyone who's listening or watching would look at that and be like, yeah, of course, like gear needs to do more, you know?
yeah, for sure, for
All
sure.
right. Well, I think we're just about to come up on 2 hours here. So if is there anything that you wanted to talk about this week that happened, or did we kind of hit every nail on the head here?
I think we hit every nail on the head. To be perfectly honest, I like. But I think the only thing that I would say is that my fiance is probably wondering where I'm at.
Well,
She's so I will tell you that this week I might be in trouble. There we
uh-oh.
go.
Uh-oh. All right, well let's make the wrap up quick then, man. You know what time it is. Plug your shit. Let's go.
Oh no! Don't make me do this again. Okay, right,
Every
hang
week,
on.
dude. Every week, you know, write it down
I
if you have
know.
to.
Okay, hang on. I'm gonna go into one of my video descriptions. Okay, so um, we have the charity drive, justgiving.com/Avengers Assemble Against Cancer.
Yeah, I should really know that. And of my YouTube channel, Stardust on YouTube, Twitter, SlightStardust, Twitch, SlightStardust. I try and stream as often as I can. I'm doing an Outriders video soon. Twitter's just a bunch of memes, but of course the main thing is the charity thing. Uh, Announcements coming on that in the next couple of days, so Twitter is the best place for it. And just a little spoiler, I do believe well, no, it's he told me he was, so I'm gonna throw him in under the bus here. High Roller's also going to be getting involved with that, but I'll explain what it is in the next couple of days. So that's about it.
Sorry, the bus just ran over me. I can't speak anymore. Yeah, guys. So yeah, like he said, I will be involved in his charity event. But I'll save that for him to announce. So make sure you do follow SlightStardust on Twitter.
On Twitter, yeah, I couldn't just have Stardust, sadly.
You're just not that popular yet. We'll get you there though. Yeah, so that's it for the episode this week, guys. Obviously, if you enjoy this, you want to see more, make sure you hit that subscribe button. In terms of myself, I'll be live tomorrow with Marvel Monday because I don't work tomorrow. We'll be playing Marvel's Avengers, hanging out, talking, chatting, doing all the good stuff. With that being said, guys, obviously this is it for another episode of Avengers Weekly Recap. We'll be back next week with more conversations. If you guys have any questions, make sure you tweet either myself or Stardust. And just like the Dad Panther one, we will do our best to incorporate those into our conversations. All right. With that being said, guys, that's it for me. That's it for Stardust. Thank you guys again. Later.
Bye.